So the 360 is now officially dead. The marketplace closed on July 29th, 2024, and honestly, Xbox, what were you doing? You should have waited one more year so that you had like a perfect 20-year run for the marketplace, because the Xbox 360 launched in 2005. Holy hell, am I old. I was just a wee little lad back when this sucker launched. Well, not this one, this is the Slim. I'm talking about the old fat white one. The one I originally had before I upgraded to this. And so, in the 19 years during its run, why they didn't push it just one more year so they could say it ran for 20 years, I don't know. Just optically, it sounds better. Like, yeah, the 360 had a run of 20 years. But now they have to say 19 years. But in memorial of this great console, I decided to do today's video, taking a look back and just kind of saying goodbye to this console and bidding farewell. Even though I have a ton of Xbox 360 videos planned for the future at some point, with the amount of games I have that I only have on this console to review, also the Kinect videos I plan on doing, and a couple of other things. Yeah, I'm not saying goodbye to the 360, but we are saying goodbye to the 360. So let's get into it. So real quick, I want to start off by giving props to Microsoft for the final 3 months of this console. They decided to release once a month a massive, and I do mean massive, discount on a huge bunch of games that are available on their marketplace, starting off with May, and then doing one in June, and then doing one in July. And these were discounts like anywhere from 70% off to mostly 90 and 95% off. So there were some serious bangers that were discounted for dirt cheap, and I do mean dirt cheap. Like the first 2 Metro games were like 40 cents for the first one and a shockingly expensive 60 cents for the sequel. I would have been willing to pay 40 cents for the first one, but 60 cents, I'm sorry Microsoft, that's too expensive. But I mean, like Sniper War, or what was it? Sniper Ghost Warrior, I always get that title wrong. That was a surprising 40 cents for that game. The Dead Island games, Dead Island and Dead Island Riptide, were like 99 cents a pop. The Resident Evil games, Resident Evil 0, 1, 4, and I think Revelations were like $1.99 each. I think one of them was like $2.99, an outstanding $2.99. But for the most part, they were $1.99 each, which is amazing because typically Resident Evil games are never that cheap. And so, like, just some of these sales were really impressive. I don't think Nintendo did that when they were shutting down their eShops, and I don't think Sony's going to do that when they finally shut down the PlayStation 3 store and the PlayStation Vita storefront. So it was really cool that Microsoft did this. Were there some titles I would have liked for them to have done a discount on? Sure. But thankfully, they did what they did, and I really appreciate the effort they took to discount some of these titles, because they are some really awesome titles. And I would have gotten more if it wasn't the fact that a lot of these I already owned physically. So there wasn't really a lot of need for me to buy them digitally. But now thinking in hindsight, I probably should have grabbed some of these digitally just because they're so dirt cheap. And so just salute Microsoft for doing that. I really appreciate that. If they ever do shut down the Xbox One marketplace, it'd be really awesome if they did the same thing. Now, my first introduction to the Xbox 360 was at the end of its kind of console run. I got one, I believe, in 2014. So it was pretty much at the end of its life cycle. I was part of the poor generation of gamers. I talked about that in a previous video, how there was a classification of gamers that they can't afford current gen consoles. They can only afford last gen consoles when they aren't very relevant anymore. And I used to be one of those. And back in 2014, when PlayStation 4 was all the rage, I wasn't looking at that. I was looking at getting a 360 or a PlayStation 3, because that generation, like, I just desperately wanted to get that generation, because like 90% of the games I wanted to get for that generation. Admittedly, PlayStation 4 is probably my favorite console of all time, if I'm just off the cuff trying to figure out which one I like the most. But my favorite generation easily was the 360 PlayStation 3 generation. I mean, just so many games from that generation are never going to be topped. Like, just, granted, I might have to eat my words in a few years, but I mean, like, just honestly, as amazing as the PS4, Xbox One generation was, they were not releasing the bangers that the 360 and the PS3 were. And just some of those games are like truly amazing. They stand the test of time. I'll go through some of the games I have for the 360 in a few minutes. But yeah, my first 360 was a white, fat 360 with no controller for $50. And I had no idea about Red Rings of Death or Red Rings, so I was a dumb kid I easily could have been taken advantage of, because this guy on eBay could have been selling a broken 360 console, and I wouldn't have known better. Luckily for my dumb luck, my blind, stupid luck, this 360 I got off eBay for $50 turned out to be a Jasper. Now, if you don't know what a Jasper is, that is the type of motherboard they had in the latest revisions of the old white, fat Xbox 360s. And these were known as the best version of the old fat 360s to get, because they were the most refined computer chip. They had the most efficient power sources. They didn't get as hot as other 360 consoles. Like, if you were going to get one of those old white classic 360 consoles, the Jasper's the one to get, because it was the best cool, and they had figured out a lot of the problems at that point. I had no idea that I had Jasper until like years later. I was just like, yeah, I got lucky and it did a red ring. My console red ringed once, and it was because I had a faulty hard drive that I had just recently bought, and I put it in and it like failed after a couple of days, and I was able to exchange it for another thing. But like, my heart like dropped when I saw that red ring and notifications, like, oh wow, did I just lose my 360? Because at the time I could not afford another one. But it turned out it was just a hard drive faulty, and I didn't get like the actual, I only got like, I guess if you have all 4 rings red, it's a technical issue, but if you get 3 red rings, it is an overheating issue, and that's the one you don't want. But so I got lucky with that, and I eventually decided to upgrade because, one, I was getting a little tired of doing like a laptop Ethernet connection to do an update for a game, and I wanted some internet connectivity to be able to get digital games and get updates easier and wallpapers. And so I found this 360S on eBay for $30, as is, does not work. I was going to try and fix it because I wanted to get into fixing consoles, because call me crazy, it's just I kind of enjoy tearing apart a video game console, especially one that doesn't work, finding the problem, putting it back together, bringing it back to life. There's just like this little sense of like accomplishment I get when doing that. I know it's weird, but you know, it's just, it's like, you know, the, oh yeah, you know, I'll tear paper or something like that. So I grabbed this thing, I plugged it in, it's turned on just fine. So I took it apart anyway, I gave it new thermal paste, which the old thermal paste was super dry, so probably what this person was experiencing was it was overheating because of faulty thermal paste, and with a new batch of thermal paste, it runs pretty fine now. Also, I cleaned out all the dust, and you may notice that this looks a little odd. This doesn't look like your typical Xbox 360S. And that's because it is a custom design that I've been doing. I wanted to have my own custom 360, and I never could afford some of the really impressive custom 360s that were out there, like the Gears of War, and I think like my personal favorite was the Halo 4 custom 360. That thing is just gorgeous, and I've never seen it affordable. So I decided to just screw it, make my own custom 360. And this mother was scratched up to high hell. It did not look presentable at all. And with this, I decided to get a carbon fiber vinyl for the 360 to put it on. And yes, this is a aftermarket stand. But yeah, after having a few issues with the company that made the vinyl, I actually was able to figure out the correct process to apply a vinyl. I made a video all about that, which I will probably leave in the description down below. And yeah, once I got the vinyl on, this thing just looked absolutely gorgeous. I mean, just the way it shimmered in the light with the carbon fiber is just like, yeah, that looks good. But one of the issues was my controller did not match, and I wanted a carbon fiber controller to match my carbon fiber console. Funny enough, once I got that completed, I actually saw a Gears of War 360 custom console available at the place I work, and I wanted to get it so bad, but I had already finished spending so much time, effort, and energy in customizing this console that it's just like, I can in no good conscience get that when I spent so much time working on this, and of course someone else got it, but it sat there for weeks just, you know, mocking me. But anyway, so I was looking for a carbon fiber shell to swap out my controller. Preferably like this controller that I only had a carbon fiber sticker on. It didn't look that great, and so it's like, okay, I want to get a carbon fiber shell to swap out the innards of this and put it in. Easier said than done. Yeah, for stuff like the Nintendo Switch, or like a Steam Deck, an ROG Ally, there's plenty of swappable shells for those kinds of things. Even an Xbox Series X controller or Xbox One controller, a PlayStation 4 controller, there's all kinds of shells you can do to swap out. But for an Xbox 360 controller, there's only like one company still making shells. It's only like metallic shells, no carbon fiber, no designs of any kind, and some of the reviews for those shells warn that they don't fit the guts properly, and they're kind of not well made. And so I thought, okay, so I'm kind of shit out of luck with a carbon fiber controller, and I was looking on Amazon, I was looking on eBay, I was looking everywhere, and then I found one auction on eBay of a guy selling a carbon fiber controller for around 30 bucks. And I jumped all over it because I did not see anything else available. And this thing wasn't perfect. The thumbsticks were not black, they were gray, and the triggers are white, unfortunately. And it didn't come with the carbon fiber back battery compartment like this shell originally would have had. But it's still a carbon fiber controller, and the right bumper does not work, and the sync button did not work. Now, luckily, I had an out controller that I was able to swap out the guts on, and I do intend on fixing that RB button because that one does not have any stick drift. This one does have stick drift. And 360 controllers are a little bit of an issue with stick drifting, especially since the third-party controllers have dead zones. And so if you have a first-person shooter on Xbox 360, it kind of sucks trying to do a first-person shooter with one of these third-party controllers. So it helps to find an official Xbox 360 controller that doesn't have dead zones and doesn't have stick drift. And so I still need to swap out the bumpers, the white bumpers on this, but for the most part, I do have now a carbon fiber Xbox 360 controller to go with my carbon fiber Xbox 360S. And it's pretty cool. Now, something really cool about the Xbox 360, any of them, whether it's the original, the S, or the E, which they were trying to make look like the Xbox One. And this was never like a huge selling point. I didn't see people freak out about it like they did with backwards compatibility on the Xbox One or the Series X. Like, those are huge features on those systems. But on the 360, it just kind of went by the wayside that it was backwards compatible with original classic Xbox. I can't say one. Xbox classic games. Microsoft has the worst naming ever. The fact they called this the 360 was stupid. Okay? It should have been called the Xbox 2. I understand PlayStation 3 would have sounded better, but come on. 360 was not a better name than Xbox 2. Okay? But yeah, no, they had backwards compatibility for original classic Xbox games on this system. Now, it wasn't all 360 games, and there was a lot of games that desperately needed it that didn't get it. But no, there were some really neat games that are backwards compatible, and I'm not going to pull out my entire collection, but I just pulled out a couple that I definitely knew were backwards compatible. One really great one is John Carpenter's The Thing, which is a sequel to the 80s masterpiece. It's not perfect, but I do really like this game. There's a lot of cool things about it, and it is getting a remaster soon, so that is pretty cool. But you can play the original one on a 360, which is really awesome. And then, of course, this one was always kind of like a staple for the 360, Soul Calibur 2, simply because back in those days, Soul Calibur was doing this really awesome thing where each console got an exclusive. PlayStation got a Tekken character, GameCube got Link, and then, of course, Xbox got the one I enjoyed the most, Spawn. And yeah, it was really cool. When I saw that I had a chance to grab this and that my 360 could play classic Xbox games, I just jumped all over it so that I could actually play as Spawn on the 360. Because I originally had Soul Calibur 2 on the PlayStation 2, and I never cared for the Hitachi exclusive character. I always wanted it to be Spawn. Another really big one was The Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction. This is kind of a hard game to find now these days, and for good reason. It's really beloved, and the 360, the Xbox version was kind of the best looking version out of the bunch, and the fact that this can play that game is pretty cool. I expected this to be one that you couldn't, because there's a lot of really awesome games on the Xbox that you can't play backwards compatible, and it's kind of stupid. Like, one of them is PsyOps, the Mindgate Conspiracy. Like, why was that not backwards compatible? I don't know why. And then, of course, last but not least, Spider-Man 2 was playable on the Xbox 360. And Spider-Man 2 was is often considered one of the greatest movie tie-in video games ever made. Which isn't saying much because a lot of people hate movie tie-in video games. But Spider-Man 2, kind of, for a period, was considered the best Spider-Man game ever made. Because it was one of the first times you had the ability to swing around an open world of New York City. You had never been able to do that before, and it just kind of was the benchmark for a while on how to do a Spider-Man game. And yeah, this was probably the best looking version available out there at the time, and it's now playable on an Xbox 360. And so, yeah, now something really weird. I did not understand why this was the case, but for some reason, if you want to do backwards compatibility on a 360, you need to have an official Microsoft hard drive. That's an official 360 Microsoft hard drive. Otherwise, you can't do it. Now, the good news is you can literally have like a 10 gigabyte Microsoft hard drive that will work. Like, because you didn't need that much space. You just needed enough space to do the saves. And it was enough. But for some reason, like, I had for the longest time a 320 aftermarket Xbox 360 clip-on hard drive, and every game worked fine off it, but original Xbox games would not work on it because it was not an official Xbox hard drive. So I had to use an official Xbox hard drive to be able to do backwards compatibility. I don't know why that's the case. It just is. Speaking of storage, another really cool thing about the 360 was you could use almost anything to play games. You could use a flash drive in one of the ports, and it would store and play games perfectly fine off it. I had no issues playing games off of a flash drive, and it was awesome. One of the most consumer-friendly ways to play video games was a 360, because you literally could just use a thumb drive that you just had hanging around. As long as it had enough space to hold games, I think it had to be like over 16 or 32 gigs. If it was over that, you could use it. I could be mistaken about that, but there was very limited restrictions for getting into playing games on the 360. It was pretty awesome. PlayStation 3, yeah, you could customize the hard drive, but you needed a specific type of hard drive. You had to open up the console a little bit, and you had to jump through a couple of hoops. It was still doable. I wouldn't say it was terrible that they did that, but like just with the 360, you could use a flash drive. Like, you don't have to worry about using too much. If you don't care about backwards compatibility, you just care about 360 games, you can just slap a flash drive into the sucker and you're good to go. I'm tempted to throw in a 1 terabyte flash drive to see if that would work, because if it does, that would be impressive. Now, with the 360, there's a couple of games that, this isn't my entire collection, but there's just a couple of select games I want to like bring up and talk about on the 360, just because like they're kind of what helped make the console amazing, and they're kind of what make the console still worth getting today, even though the marketplace is closed. And so, you know, just throwing out a couple of them. The first game I ever played on the 360 was, you guessed it, Gears of War. Not this copy. I had just a standard, like, basic copy, and then I found this bonus disc copy that has like a special additional disc that comes with it, and I saw a collector's edition for $10. I didn't grab it, and then when I went back to get it, it was gone, which sucks. But yeah, no, this game was outstanding for a first time play on a new console. I mean, imagine being a kid in 2006. Your grandparents just got you a new Xbox 360 for Christmas, and this was with it. You were eating pretty good as a little kid. And so, like, absolutely, if I ever have kids, like, I'm definitely going to, like, just, hey, kids, here's Gears of War. Because it's one of those games that's rated M for mature, but it's like, it's gory, but only against aliens. It's not like you're chainsawing people, so it's kind of like a safe M rating. Like, if I ever saw a kid playing this by himself, I wouldn't go over and turn off the TV. If I ever saw a kid playing Grand Theft Auto by himself, I might say, hey, did anyone approve of this? So, yeah, because it literally, like, yeah, it's shocking you're chainsawing enemies, but it's against aliens. So it's like, yeah, it's not that bad. I wouldn't be offended if I saw a kid playing this. And definitely, if I ever have kids, I'm going to, like, rock their worlds with this. But then, like, you have the 360 games that people have been desperately begging Xbox to bring backwards compatibility to the Xbox Series X and Xbox One, because they're Activision games, and, you know, people really want to, you know, like, jump all over these and grab these. And so, like, the first one is Wolfenstein. Like, seriously, Microsoft now owns the rights to this game. They own the IP, they own the two studios that made it, and they owned the publishing house that released it, Activision. And so, like, seriously, they even own Bethesda, the company that had the rights to Wolfenstein after this one. So literally, Xbox has no excuse to not bring this forward in backwards compatibility. And as it stands right now, at the time of this recording, it's still only playable on Xbox 360, PC, and PlayStation 3. I could be mistaken about the PC, but I think it was available on the PC. And I haven't played through this completely, but I have played the intro. It's like, you know, for a 2009 attempt at Wolfenstein, it was kind of cool, actually. And so I'm looking forward to playing more of that and doing a review on it. And then the other one that was made by Activision, that Microsoft owns the studio that made it, owns the publishing house that made it, owns the rights to the game, is Singularity. And honestly, like, a lot of people consider this like a really good BioShock competitor. A lot of people have said that, like, when Atomic Heart came out, oh, you should definitely play this over Atomic Heart. And so, like, this has quite a beloved fan following now, and a lot of people have been begging Microsoft to bring this forward with backwards compatibility. Right now, only available on the 360 and the PlayStation 3. And I don't even know. Yeah, it was still being sold digitally. I think they got a discount for like $7, which is pricey for the discounts they were doing, because most of them dropped them down to like $2. But still, it was like $20 for the longest time, or $30 for the longest time. So the fact that it dropped down to $7 was a good chance for people to grab this before it was too late. And then one that's super unlikely because it is a Marvel property, but if Microsoft could pull this one through, they could get this to come out at the same time Insomniac's new attempt is coming out, and that is X-Men Origins Wolverine. And surprisingly, I got this for $5 at Family Video before it closed, and like a few weeks later, this shot up in price to like $45, and now I've seen this for like $60, and it's one of those games I don't want to sell simply because I did have a lot of fun with it. It's better than the movie. Like, if you want to experience the story of X-Men Origins Wolverine, just play the game, because so many of the scenes are done better than the movie. I should do a video comparing the introduction of the Blob in the movie to the introduction of the Blob in this. It's so much better in the game than it is in the movie. And then there are the other games. Like, there are still some exclusives stuck on this console. Case in point, 99 Nights and 99 Nights 2, or N3 2. These were both Xbox exclusives, and they are still exclusive to the Xbox 360 console. I'm surprised that they didn't try bringing them forward through backwards compatibility. Now, granted, the second one is published by Konami, so that might be an issue there. But the first one, I think, was only published by, like, the publishing house was Microsoft Game Studios. So the fact that the first one wasn't brought forward through backwards compatibility is a little bit surprising. But yeah, still only available on this console. And I found these one day at GameStop. They were like $9 a piece. It's just like, holy hell, I've never seen these in person, and the fact that someone actually brought them in is kind of surprising. And then, like, another interesting one is Condemned 2 Bloodshot, because the first Condemned is actually backwards compatible on Xbox 360 Marketplace, but this one wasn't for some reason. So, you know, like, I have it digitally on the Xbox Series X, and when I play that one, I have to go back to the 360 to play the sequel. there's a couple of things like that happens, but they're like, yeah, this is only available on the PS3 and the Xbox 360, and I don't even think you can get it digitally anymore on the 360, so you have to find a physical copy of this. There's a lot of games like that with this console, which makes it kind of like a must-get, even though there's newer consoles that play all of the biggest hits that are on this. There's still a couple of like really niche games that you can't really get anywhere else. Whether you go for the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox 360, there's a couple of games like these that are just, you know, kind of the thing that are really give you the most benefit of getting one of those old ancient consoles. And then two games that were heavily discounted in the sales that they did prior to shutting down the marketplace was Destroy All Humans, Path of the Furon, and then Remember Me. And like this was like $2 and Destroy All Humans was like $5, but I already had these physically, and like this was the Destroy All Humans, Path of the Furon was this weird like third chapter that didn't get any fanfare like the first two, and it just kind of like came out and disappeared into the void. And so I like never saw these physically. I only ever heard them like being sold digitally, and the fact that I found one physically I was kind of surprised by. But I mean, it was just like, yeah, it was a third chapter that just like had no impact when it came out, and so it was kind of funny that happened. But Remember Me, like, if you didn't grab this during that Xbox Marketplace sale, that is a travesty, because this was a fantastic game that wasn't properly advertised right when it first came out, and they didn't spend enough time on the combat. Like, if they had thrown in a counter move you could have done in combat, this would have been a really exceptional game. That was like one of the biggest criticisms, is you couldn't counter any hits, so you had to just dodge the entire time. But the story was fantastic. This game to this day still looks jaw-dropping. Like, I popped it in a few weeks ago, and literally my jaw was just like, how does this game look this good? This system is 20 years old, and this game looks this good. And so definitely it was one of those games, and when it one of those games that just was fantastic, didn't get the proper coverage when it came out. Everyone dunked on it when it came out, saying it's not that good, it's an Uncharted knockoff, and that sale dropped it down to like $1.99 or $2.99. Definitely worth it grabbing that for that price, because it was a really solid game. Then you have one that's really getting high up in popularity because the sequel's coming out soon, Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine. And this one I got for $5, and it's only available on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And then a personal favorite of mine, it's widely considered one of the worst games to come out on the 360, but I have a special place in my heart for it because, one, I am a sucker for anything out of this franchise, and two, I'm willing to overlook a lot of its issues. Aliens Colonial Marines. Only available on this generation of consoles, the 360 and the PlayStation 3. And so I constantly see that for like $6, and that's for good reason, because it's not a good game, but I like it. I've always enjoyed it. And then even with Kinect, a lot of people dunk on Kinect, but there's actually some really cool games on the Kinect, mainly Marvel's Avengers Battle for Earth and Power Up Heroes. They're kind of the same game, basically. They have a lot of the same mechanics. One's a little bit more customizable than the other one, but I mean, like, if you have a family, these two games are like perfect for Kinect, and honestly, I'm really looking forward to playing some of these Kinect games that I have. And so, yeah, that was just kind of like a quick look through some of the games that came out on the 360 that I always enjoyed. And having both an Xbox 360 Fat and a 360S, I've played around with an E a few times. Something that was a little bit unfortunate with these, apart from the Red Ring of Death, there's no reason for me to really dunk on the Red Ring of Death any more than I already have. I've done videos on the Red Ring of Death. But the tabs on these systems were super easy to break, specifically up here on the front. Actually, this tab on the front, I did break, not because I was opening or closing it. I literally just picked this up one time, my thumb pressed here, and the tab broke. They just used really spindly plastic. And on the old fat ones, they had swappable faceplates, which was a cool concept. I actually had one of them in carbon fiber. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. They kind of stopped doing it by 2008, 2009, which kind of sucks. And those broke. Like, I got the carbon fiber one sealed in the package, and the moment I took it out and I pushed one of the tabs, like the doors, the tab just broke. And it's just like they don't last. And if you find one that has all the tabs not broken, you want to preserve that, because they didn't last. Another thing that was really cool was game installs. Typically, with this system, like 99% of the games had to have a play-off disc feature. So you pop the disc in, it had to be a play-off disc. It was a requirement that Microsoft had for all game studios releasing something on the 360. And it got a little hard for them, and sometimes they had to release multiple discs. By the end of the 360, they kind of finally conceded that, yeah, okay, if you release something on 360, you don't have to have it playable off the disc initially, because Grand Theft Auto 5, which was one of the biggest games that released on the system, it needed an install disc first before you could start playing. And Microsoft wasn't going to say you can't do that, so they allowed games to start having a mandatory install before you could start playing. But for the most part, these games usually could be played straight off disc. Now, the system gets super loud when you do that, so there was this really cool feature where you can install the contents off the disc if you want to onto the hard drive. And that way the disc only really served as a CD key then. And yeah, I absolutely love that, because the disc drive doesn't spin up when you're playing the game. After the first couple of minutes, it stops spinning, and you have a pretty quiet, enjoyable experience then. And another neat thing is, let's say you have a disc with scratch on it, and you could try playing through it all in one sitting before you found that that scratch was making the game defective or not. Or you could just do an install, and if it completely installed onto the hard drive, you're fine. That game's going to play perfectly fine. You just need to be able to do the CD key read off it, which is super easy. There's never a time when it can't read off the CD key. And so, yeah, that was a cool way of like determining if these discs were playable enough. It was just like, you get home, do the install, and if it installs fine, okay, you're good. You don't have to play it right away, and you're safe. I really enjoyed that, and I kind of wish the PlayStation 3 offered that, or older game systems offer that, because like a PlayStation 2, if there's a scratch, you have to play through the game to find out if the PlayStation 2 is going to work completely or not. And like, just going back, yeah, everyone dunked on the Kinect, but I actually think the Kinect is kind of a cool gimmick. I have one right up there. I do plan on doing a carbon fiber final onto the Kinect as well. And so I do have a lot of Kinect videos down in the pipeline. I don't know when I'm going to get around to them, but eventually I am. And I am looking forward to doing all of the pros and cons of the Kinect, as well as the PlayStation 3 Move. I have that. And I may even have another similar peripheral coming down in the pipeline. If you see it, you see it. But no, the Xbox 360 carried its weight. It was a fantastic console. I absolutely love it. I don't know if I'm ever going to get rid of a 360. Even if I lose this one, I will at some point get a replacement 360, because I've always enjoyed this console. It was such a fantastic consumer-friendly console. I have such a nice collection of 360 games that I don't see myself ever completely getting rid of my 360 collection, and therefore I don't see myself ever not having an Xbox 360. The fact that the marketplace is now closed is a bit of a shame. But you know what? I absolutely love this console, and it's still a quality console without its storefront. And so yeah, if you were ever interested in an Xbox 360, definitely you should go check one out, especially since they're pretty affordable these days. Now, just keep in mind, if you're going after one of the fat white ones, make sure it's a 2008 or newer. I wouldn't really go for anything prior to 2008, because 2008 was the first year they started implementing the Jasper system. Late 2008, early 2008 was its predecessor that was still pretty decent. It wasn't as good as the Jasper, but you could get along with that revision as well. So, like, just kind of keep the fat ones to 2008 or newer, unless you're going for one of the special custom consoles. I understand if you do that. But yeah, no, absolutely. This was a wonderful console series. I really enjoyed it. And I look forward to making more videos on this. But just wanting to say farewell to the Xbox 360 and the Xbox 360 Marketplace. You did good, pig. That'll do. Anyway, that's been my reminiscing or my memorial for the Xbox 360. What did you guys think? Please say off down in the comments down below on some of your Xbox 360 experiences. I want to hear what you guys did to save your consoles. I want to hear your craziest Xbox 360 stories. And I just realized I gotta throw this at the beginning, because rarely do people make it to the end of one of my videos. So anyway, my name is Christopher Kyle with 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all for today.